So today we visited what is undoubtedly the epicenter of the contemporary art scene in Shanghai. It's the Moganshan Road Art Center. This is a complex of former warehouse and factory buildings. So when you walk into the Moganshan Road complex, you see an interesting mishmash of industrial architecture. Clearly some of the buildings are the original factory and warehouse structures that were built probably in the 1920s and 1930s. Some of them have been renovated, I'd say quite expensively, with very fine and impressive materials, and they look fantastic. That about 10 years ago first became a destination for art galleries and artist studios, and now there are about 100 galleries and studios total. This is the shining hot epicenter of the art scene in Shanghai, and if you are a gallerist or an artist with any ambition in this town, this is where you want to be. We started the morning visiting Zhang Xiaoling, who's actually one of the more important figures in contemporary Chinese painting right now. He's got a show coming up at the Kunsthal in Bern, Switzerland, and he's already exhibited across the world with several prominent galleries in New York and London. We learned from our conversation with him that he had been a figurative painter for many, many years and really made his name as a figurative painter. And only in the last 6 or 7 had he moved towards this object-based, almost still lifestyle. And what we saw in his studio were some of the objects that he was actually painting. Empty buckets, an old refrigerator, things like this that he's now chosen to focus his eye on. We're seeing in contemporary Chinese painting is increasingly the manufactured good, as opposed to an animal or a bowl of fruit or a handmade ceramic pitcher. It's something that is mass-produced, and I think we're seeing that here. We're seeing it in some of the buckets of this artist on the canvases around us, as well as some of the other work that we've seen. It's interesting, and I think the large installation piece with the dogs that we saw at Contrast Gallery at their installation spaces also speaks to that. It's all about sort of mass production, and that's really a cornerstone of the transformation that's taking place in China right now, but the cause and the effect of mass production on a scale that has never been experienced ever before on the planet.
Then we went to my favorite gallery so far, Eastlink Gallery, and the proprietor, Mr. Li, is actually the Pied Piper of sorts for the Moganshan area. He was the first one to set up his gallery here.
We took a freight elevator to the 5th floor of an old building, which reminded me of the very first space we opened up in San Francisco several years ago. The doors opened and there was a broad expanse, one of the larger gallery spaces we've visited so far. And in it was a great collection of diverse paintings, sculptures, photography, digital media works. And I had an immediate affinity with Mr. Li and his program. He shows a diverse mix of artists, as do I. His focus is primarily on emerging and mid-career artists, as is mine. And to that degree, it felt like his gallery occupied a niche somewhere in between Shang art and contrast, which are really at the peak of the art scene here, and perhaps the Spring Gallery, which we visited a couple of days ago, which seemed a little bit raw and still needing some time and space to grow. And so it's really this middle niche that I identify with, and that's what I found in Eastlink Gallery.
And we saw some wonderful sculptures made of bronze, although they looked as though they could have been porcelain.
These, believe it or not, are bronze sculptures that have been painted in enamel. And I think there's a strength and a permanence that comes from the choice of materials. There's a sinister element to them and a kind of subversively sexual element to them that gives me a sense of mystery and foreboding in a sense. There's something dreamlike, perhaps slightly nightmarish to them, and yet lighthearted and whimsical and kind of uplifting at the same time. And I would bring these back and I would show them. The artist is Yu Fan, who was exhibited just last month at the Shanghai Biennale, and obviously is doing very well here, and I think would be a good fit for us.